Let's get right into it. Number 8. The original refrigerator. You open your fridge and that container of leftover spaghetti from 3 days ago is giving you a look. You don't trust it. You conduct a brief, highly scientific sniff test, declare it a potential biohazard, and sentence it to the garbage. Congratulations, you've just failed a test your ancestors would have passed while half asleep. Before the invention of the magical cold box that hums in your kitchen, letting food go bad wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. Our ancestors couldn't just order a pizza if their mammoth steaks started to turn. They were masters of preservation, playing a high-stakes game of bacterial Jenga, using nothing but salt, smoke, wind, and a deep understanding of what makes things rot. They were the original food preppers, and their techniques were brutally effective. Think about jerky. That's not a gas station snack, it's a survival masterpiece. They'd slice meat thin and dry it in the sun and wind, sucking all the moisture out so bacteria couldn't throw a party. Or they'd build a smoker and hang meat for days, infusing it with antimicrobial compounds from the wood smoke that also made it delicious. They buried vegetables in cool dirt, packed fish in salt to mummify it into a protein-rich brick, and fermented everything from cabbage to milk, essentially sicking good bacteria on their food to ward off the bad. This wasn't a hobby. It was a full-time job requiring constant vigilance and a level of food science intuition we've completely outsourced to expiration dates. They understood their environment in a way we can't fathom, all in the name of not starving to death during a long winter. We just trust the label and hope for the best. So next time you toss some slightly wilted spinach, pour one out for the ancestors who could make a side of beef last for 6 months with nothing but some salt and a breeze. Number 7. Turning rocks into knives. Humans have a deep, primal love for sharp objects. We've just gotten incredibly lazy about it. You can go online right now and order a Japanese chef's knife forged from 67 layers of Damascus steel, and it will arrive at your door in 2 days. It's a work of art. But your great-great-great to the power of 1,000 grandfather would have looked at you, looked at the knife, and then looked at his own handiwork. A piece of flint he just turned into a razor-sharp blade by smashing it with another rock, and been thoroughly unimpressed. This is the art of flint knapping, and it's arguably the most important technology humanity ever invented. For nearly 2 million years, our primary skill was looking at a lump of stone and knowing exactly how to hit it to make it sharp. It's not just random smashing. It's a sophisticated process of applied physics. Certain rocks, like flint, chert, and obsidian, break with what's called a conchoidal fracture, the same way thick glass breaks. It creates smooth, curved surfaces with an edge that can be microscopically sharper than a modern surgical scalpel. To do it, you need a hammerstone and a core. You strike the core at the perfect angle with the perfect amount of force, and a flake of stone shears off. Do this repeatedly, with smaller and more delicate tools for the finishing touches, and you can create anything from a massive hand axe to a delicate arrowhead. It's a skill that takes thousands of hours to master. Most of us, if handed 2 rocks and told to make a knife, would end up with 2 slightly smaller rocks and a bloody thumb. Our ancestors used these tools for everything: butchering animals, scraping hides, carving wood, and defending themselves. A good stone tool was life. We now use our hands to type complaints about slow Wi-Fi. Basically, our ancestors could create a life-saving surgical instrument from a riverbed pebble, and we can barely open a clamshell package without resorting to scissors we bought online. Number 6. Reading the ground. You lose your friend in a crowded mall. What do? You pull out your phone and text, "Where you at?" Or maybe check their location on a map. Problem solved in 12 seconds. Now imagine your friend, let's call him Grog, wandered off into the woods to chase a particularly interesting squirrel and hasn't come back. There's no cell service. There is, however, a very hungry-looking saber-toothed cat in the area. What do you do now? If you were one of our ancestors, you'd get down on your hands and knees and start reading the ground like it was the morning paper. This is tracking, and it's not just looking for footprints. It's a form of environmental storytelling. A single bent blade of grass could tell you which way Grog went. A scuff mark on a rock might indicate he was dragging his feet, meaning he's tired. A patch of disturbed leaves, a single snapped twig, the way pebbles are scattered, all of it is data. An expert tracker could tell you not just who passed by, but when. They'd know the difference between the track of a deer that was calmly grazing and one that was fleeing in terror. They could look at a set of prints in the mud and know the animal's gait, its speed, and maybe even whether it was injured. This wasn't a party trick. It was how you found dinner and avoided becoming dinner. It was a deep, holistic understanding of cause and effect written on the landscape. We've completely lost this language. We walk through nature seeing a green blur. Our eyes train to look for signs and logos, not subtle disturbances in the soil. Our brain's pattern recognition software is calibrated for finding the Netflix icon, not the trail of a wild boar. An ancient tracker could follow a trail for days across varied terrain, while we can't even find our car in a parking garage without hitting the panic button on our key fob. Number 5. The art of not poisoning yourself. Picture this. You're walking through the woods, and you see some bright red berries. They look a bit like raspberries, but also not. What do? If you're a modern human, you pull out your phone, take a picture, and let a plant identification app tell you, there is a 73% chance this is a deadly nightshade. We recommend not putting this in your mouth. Your ancestors had no such app. Their app was a combination of generational knowledge passed down through song and story, and a terrifyingly high-stakes game of trial and error. Foraging wasn't just about finding bonus snacks, it was a core part of their diet. They knew which roots were packed with calories, which leaves could be used for medicine, and which mushrooms would make a tasty soup versus which ones would introduce you to your own spirit animal before shutting down your liver. This knowledge was incredibly nuanced. They knew that a certain plant was edible in the spring but toxic in the fall. They knew you had to boil a specific root 3 times, changing the water each time, to leach out the poisons. They could differentiate between dozens of types of acorns, knowing which ones needed to have their bitter tannins soaked out before being ground into flour. This was expert-level botany, chemistry, and culinary arts all rolled into one, practiced daily. Our connection to this is so severed that most of us can't confidently identify more than a handful of plants. We trust plastic packaging and government-approved labels implicitly. We see a dandelion growing in the yard, and we call it a weed. But our ancestors saw a nutritious salad green, a root that could be roasted for a coffee substitute, and a flower that could be made into wine. They saw a pharmacy and a pantry. We see a chore. Number 4. Navigating by nature. Your phone dies. You're in an unfamiliar part of town, and you need to get home. A cold sweat breaks out. Your internal monologue is just a loop of panic and regret for not buying that portable charger. You are, for all intents and purposes, hopelessly lost just a few miles from your own bed. This is the modern condition. For 99.9% of human history, there was no Google Maps. There wasn't even a map. Your brain was the map, and your GPS was the entire world around you. Our ancestors navigated using a complex mental toolkit of environmental cues. The most obvious one was the sun. They knew it rose in the east and set in the west, and they could track its arc across the sky to get a surprisingly accurate sense of direction and time. At night, the stars were their guide. They didn't just see a random spray of glitter. They saw patterns, stories, and, most importantly, a fixed point. In the northern hemisphere, Polaris, the North Star, was the anchor of the sky, the one constant you could always rely on. But it went so much deeper. They paid attention to prevailing winds, the slope of the land, the flow of water, and even the behavior of plants and animals. They built mental maps of vast territories, memorizing the locations of mountains, rivers, and crucial resources. This wasn't just a skill. It was a fundamental way of seeing the world, of being deeply embedded within it. Their spatial awareness was off the charts because their life depended on it. We've outsourced that entire cognitive function to a friendly voice that says, in 200 feet, turn left. Our brains, no longer needing to build those complex mental maps, have let that skill atrophy. We follow a blue dot on a screen, often oblivious to the actual world we're moving through. Our ancestors could cross continents by reading the sky. We get confused in a shopping mall with a detailed directory right in front of us. Our internal compass is basically spinning in circles, begging for a satellite signal. Number 3. Making fire from nothing. There are few things more primal, more fundamentally human than fire. It gives us warmth, light, protection from predators, and the ability to cook our food, unlocking vital nutrients. Fire is what allowed us to become us. And right now, the peak of your fire-making ability probably involves a disposable lighter, or, if you're feeling rustic, a match. Our ancestors would weep. For them, making fire was an act of sheer will and physical exertion. Imagine the first person who discovered the friction fire, the sheer, mind-numbing patience it must have taken. The most common method was the hand drill, a simple spindle of wood spun rapidly back and forth between your palms, its tip grinding into a fireboard. You have to do this fast, with constant downward pressure, until the friction generates enough heat to create a tiny glowing ember in a pile of wood dust. This is not easy. Your hands will get raw. Your arms will feel like they're about to fall off. You'll be sweating, cursing, and on the verge of giving up. And then, if you've done everything right, if the wood is dry enough, if your technique is perfect, if the gods of combustion are smiling upon you, you'll see a wisp of smoke. You have created a tiny coal, a fragile spark of life. Now you have to gently transfer it to a tinder bundle of dry grass or bark and blow on it, coaxing it into a flame. It's a process that feels less like a science and more like a magic ritual. And they had to do this in rain, in snow, in whatever miserable conditions nature threw at them. We get annoyed if our lighter takes 2 clicks to ignite. The ability to conjure flame from 2 pieces of wood is a superpower we all used to possess. And now it's a niche hobby for hardcore survivalists. We've traded a profound elemental skill for a cheap plastic tool filled with butane. Number 2. Telling time with the sky. You glance at your watch, it's 3:47 p.m. You know this with absolute digital precision. You're running a few minutes late for a meeting that starts at 4:00. This low-grade time anxiety is a constant hum in the background of modern life. We live in a world sliced into seconds, minutes, and hours, a rigid grid we impose upon the day. Our ancestors would find this completely insane. They didn't have clocks, but they were masters of timekeeping. Their clock was the sky. The sun's position told them everything they needed to know. They could look up, judge the angle of the sun, and know if it was mid-morning, noon, or late afternoon with incredible accuracy. They built sundials, from simple sticks in the ground to massive stone structures, to track the passage of the day. But their sense of time was also more fluid and natural. It wasn't about minutes and seconds. It was about seasons and cycles. They knew it was time to plant when a certain constellation appeared on the horizon after sunset. They knew it was time to hunt a specific animal when a particular flower began to bloom. The entire natural world was their calendar. The length of the shadows, the phase of the moon, the migration of birds, it was all part of a grand, interconnected timepiece. We've replaced this deep, observational awareness with a series of alarms on our phones. We don't notice the subtle shift in light that signals the coming of dusk. We just see that it's 6:30 p.m. and time for dinner. We don't mark the changing of seasons by the stars. We just know the pumpkin spice latte is back on the menu. We've become slaves to a numerical system, forgetting that time is also a story told by the sun, the moon, and the earth itself. Number 1, the silence of the mind. Okay, this one isn't about a physical skill. It's about a mental one, and it might be the most important one we've lost. Try this. Sit in a room for 5 minutes with no phone, no music, no TV, no book. Nothing. Just you and your own thoughts. For most of us, this is excruciating. The silence is deafening. Our brains, starved of constant input, will start to fidget, race, and scream for distraction. Our ancestors lived in a world that was, by our standards, profoundly quiet. Their days weren't filled with notifications, podcasts, streaming services, and the 24-hour news cycle. Their world was filled with the sounds of wind, birds, rustling leaves, and the crackle of a fire. They experienced long periods of what we would call boredom, but to them it was just being. This wasn't empty time. This was time for observation, reflection, and awareness. When your mind isn't being constantly bombarded with external stimuli, it turns inward and outward in a different way. You notice the tiny details of the world around you. You process your thoughts and emotions. You plan, you remember, you imagine. This mental space was essential for developing all the other skills on this list. You can't learn to read the ground or the sky if your attention is fragmented into a million tiny pieces. We have almost completely lost the ability to be alone with our own minds. We treat silence like a void that needs to be filled, and we have an infinite number of digital tools to fill it. This constant stream of information has rewired our brains for distraction, making deep focus a rare and precious commodity. Our ancestors had minds that were honed for patience and quiet observation. Our minds are like web browsers with 50 tabs open at once, all of them playing different videos. Perhaps the greatest forgotten survival skill isn't how to make a fire, but how to sit by one in silence and just think. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them,